Benedicte, how likely is it that the military is actually going to have to step in?
Well, the coming days will tell. I think the hope of the government is that it won't be needed. But certainly after a fourth day of long queues and pump closures, it has come to this. There were rumours that the army would be deployed. Then that was denied by the government yesterday. And then very, very late last night, the army was put on standby, we were told, to be ready to help to ease pressure on petrol stations and deliver fuel where it is most needed. So military tanker drivers, we're told, will be trained. So they are ready to be deployed if necessary. And up to 150 military tanker drivers will prepare to deliver to forecourts which have run dry. I understand the minimum training is 5 days for that. And it's Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng who described it as a sensible precautionary measure, as he reiterated that the UK has strong supplies of fuel. It's a distribution problem, a supply problem, getting it from either the refineries and the stockage stations to actually the petrol stations. Why? That's because there is a very big shortage of HGV drivers here. 100,000 drivers are lacking here, and that, combined with the exceptional demand and some panicking and anxious drivers going to fill up their tanks and long queues at petrol stations and many stations increasingly running on empty, that is what has created what some are calling the perfect storm. And what has happened now is that the industry, the fuel industry last night said that they're hopeful that things will return to normal in the coming days. But meanwhile, understandably and unsurprisingly, there are mounting calls for key workers such as health and social care staff to receive priority access to fuel where it is available in order for the country to keep going, the health system to keep going.
And Benedicte, to combat that lack of lorry drivers, the government has also announced measures like giving temporary visas to foreign drivers. Is all of that going to be enough to resolve this crisis?
Well, that's the hope of the government, but it is unlikely that 5,000 visas, temporary at that will start at the beginning of October, that will end on Christmas Eve, will be terribly appealing to HGV drivers already trained and very experienced in the EU, when other EU countries, as has been repeatedly pointed out by the British government, lack HGV drivers as well, let alone the bureaucracy since Brexit. And of course, Brexit has played a part in all of this, the tougher rules as far as immigration is concerned, also the pandemic, the lack of HGV driving tests, just to name just one example. Meanwhile, the main opposition party, the Labour Party, who are actually holding their annual party conference, they said the latest government response to the fuel crisis was, quote, an admission of failure, and that asking the army to step up was, quote, a sticking plaster. In other words, it's a short-term possible solution, but not a long-term solution. There's no doubt that this fuel supply shortage and crisis is really very embarrassing, indeed damaging for the image of the ruling Conservative Party led by Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, who will be leading his own party conference just in a few days. So the hope, I think, not just fingers crossed, is that some of these solutions and some of the demand, certainly, of anxious drivers filling up their tanks is going to calm down.
All right, Benedicte Paviot, thank you very much for that update on the UK fuel crisis from London.